If you had walked into that house during the day, you might have thought it was simply old, neglected, forgotten by time. But if you had spent a night there, you probably would have left with the same feeling I did, that something inside that house was deeply wrong. I was 20 years old when I took a temporary job working as a maid for an elderly woman named Mel. The position only lasted a couple of weeks, but even now, years later, I can still picture every detail of that property as clearly as if I were standing there. Mel lived alone in a massive wooden house that sat on roughly 2 acres of land. Woods surrounded the property on 3 sides, while a lonely road bordered the 4th. It could have been a beautiful place if someone had cared for it. Instead, the yard looked abandoned. Tall grass swallowed old garden beds. Weeds climbed over cracked stone pathways. Branches hung low over the roof like skeletal fingers. The house itself looked ancient. The moment you stepped inside, it felt as though you'd entered another decade, maybe another century. The interior was surprisingly dark. Even during bright afternoons, many rooms remained cloaked in shadow. Mel had a habit that puzzled me from the very beginning. She kept the blinds shut in several rooms at all times. Sometimes, while cleaning, I would raise them to let sunlight spill across the dusty floors. The natural light instantly made the rooms feel more welcoming. Yet every single time, by the next day, the blinds would be closed again, as if she couldn't stand daylight. The house felt even stranger because Mel rarely used electric lights. Instead, she often lit candles in certain rooms. Their flickering glow danced across faded wallpaper and old wooden furniture, making the entire place feel frozen in time. Every floorboard creaked. Every hallway groaned. Even during quiet moments, the house seemed alive with tiny noises. Mel herself was around 70 years old. She wasn't particularly friendly, but she wasn't openly rude either. She spoke very little and mostly gave instructions. My responsibilities were simple enough: sweeping floors, dusting furniture, washing dishes, doing laundry, sorting mail, and handling physical chores she could no longer manage herself. At first, I assumed she was simply eccentric. By the end of that weekend, I realized eccentric wasn't the right word. The weekend everything happened began on a Friday. That morning seemed normal enough. When I arrived at the property, I carried a backpack filled with clothes, toiletries, and a few personal items. Mel had asked me to stay overnight for a day or 2 so I could help around the house throughout the weekend. The place had 4 bedrooms despite only 1 person living there, so accommodations weren't exactly a problem. I walked into the room where I would be sleeping and dropped my backpack onto the bed. The mattress looked old enough to belong in a museum. As I turned toward the doorway, I nearly jumped. Mel was standing there. She hadn't knocked. She hadn't announced herself. She was simply there. For some reason, she had a habit of appearing silently. It wasn't the first time she'd startled me, but something about seeing her standing motionless in the doorway sent an uncomfortable chill through me. She didn't greet me. Instead, she immediately instructed me to clean the bedroom. After that, she told me to straighten up the rest of the house. Then she left. I watched her disappear toward the staircase and head upstairs. That was practically the last time I saw her all day. Every now and then, while cleaning downstairs, I would hear footsteps above me. Slow pacing. Back and forth. Back and forth. Hour after hour. There were no televisions in the house. No radio playing. No visitors. Just footsteps. The sounds echoed through the ceiling while I worked. At some point, another strange detail resurfaced in my mind. The basement. From my very first day working there, Mel had been unusually protective of it. She'd made it clear that the basement was completely off limits. Not off limits because it was dangerous, not because it contained fragile items. Simply off limits. The firmness in her voice whenever she mentioned it had always stood out to me. As evenings settled over the property, the woods outside darkened into black walls of shadow. The old house grew quieter. By nighttime, I was exhausted. This was years before smartphones were common, so I couldn't simply scroll through a screen before bed. I had nothing to do except lie down and try to sleep. It was probably around 9 or 10 o'clock. The mattress was unbelievably uncomfortable. Springs pressed into my back no matter how I shifted. For hours, I tossed and turned. Outside, the wind occasionally brushed against the house. Inside, every creak seemed amplified by the silence. Eventually, sometime deep into the night, I began hearing footsteps in the hallway. And that's when the uneasiness truly began. At first, the footsteps didn't seem alarming. I assumed it was Mel heading to the bathroom or getting a drink of water. The sounds moved slowly across the creaking floorboards outside my room. Then they stopped, right outside my door. I sat upright in bed. The house became completely silent. I could hear the subtle groan of wood under someone's weight. Whoever stood outside wasn't moving. They were simply standing there, listening, waiting. A knot formed in my stomach. After what felt like several minutes, the floorboards creaked again and the footsteps continued down the hallway. I finally relaxed, only slightly. A short while later, I heard stairs creaking. Then a door downstairs opened. A few seconds later, it closed. Even in the darkness, I immediately thought of the basement. I couldn't explain why. It was just a feeling. The same basement Mel had forbidden me from entering. Time passed. I lay awake, staring into darkness. Then I heard the door open again. The sound came from downstairs. A moment later, footsteps began climbing the stairs. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Each step produced a long wooden groan. The sounds reached the second floor, then the hallway, then my door. Again, the footsteps stopped. My heart hammered so loudly I thought whoever was outside might hear it. The floor creaked under shifting weight. Then came a sound that made every muscle in my body tense. The doorknob slowly turned. I immediately dropped back onto the mattress and pulled the blanket over myself. I closed my eyes and pretended to be asleep. The door opened. I heard footsteps enter the room. 1 step, 2 steps, 3, then silence. Whoever stood there remained motionless. I could feel their presence. I don't know how long it lasted. Maybe seconds, maybe longer. Finally, the footsteps retreated. The door closed. The hallway creaked once more. Eventually, I heard another bedroom door shut somewhere upstairs. Mel had gone back to her room. I opened my eyes and stared into darkness. Nothing about that situation felt normal. Nothing. Why would she come into my room in the middle of the night? Why stand there watching me? The questions kept piling up, and eventually curiosity became stronger than fear. About 30 minutes later, I made a decision. I was going to find out what was in that basement. I slipped quietly from bed and opened my door. The hallway was empty. Every step downstairs felt impossibly loud despite my efforts to move silently. When I reached the first floor, I stood before the heavy basement door. My pulse raced. Then I grabbed the handle and opened it. The basement stairs descended into darkness. For a moment, I considered turning around. Instead, I reached for the light switch. The overhead lights flickered on. Then I started down. Each step felt heavier than the last. The air grew cooler. A faint stale smell lingered below. When I reached the bottom, I froze. Every thought vanished. My body refused to move. In the center of the basement sat 2 old wooden chairs. And in those chairs were 2 human bodies. At least, that's what they appeared to be. My first reaction was disbelief. My mind struggled to process what I was seeing. The figures sat upright as though someone had carefully positioned them there. One insect crawled across a partially exposed area of skin. The sight made my stomach twist. I wanted to run. I wanted to convince myself they weren't real. But I couldn't. Slowly, I stepped closer. The closer I got, the worse the reality became. These weren't mannequins. They weren't decorations. They were human remains. Both appeared to be male. Each had a wig placed on its head. One of them was larger than the other. The larger figure even wore a beret. Everything about the display felt deliberate, as though someone had arranged them and continued maintaining them. I had no knowledge of decomposition, but they looked incredibly old. Months old, possibly close to a year. The realization sent cold fear flooding through me. I needed to leave immediately. Then I heard something. A creak. From upstairs. I turned toward the staircase. Footsteps. Someone was moving across the first floor, coming toward the basement. My blood ran cold. There wasn't enough time to reach the stairs. I couldn't make it. Panicking, I darted behind an old couch near the wall and crouched low. The footsteps reached the basement door. A moment later, the stairs began to groan. 1 step at a time. Slowly, deliberately, descending. I covered my mouth with both hands to stop myself from breathing too loudly. The footsteps reached the basement floor. Silence followed. Then a voice. Soft, almost gentle. She whispered my name. For a brief second, I leaned sideways and looked around the couch. What I saw erased any remaining doubt. Mel was already halfway across the basement, and in her hand was a large kitchen knife. She wasn't searching randomly. She knew exactly why I was down there. And suddenly, I understood that staying hidden wasn't going to save me. The moment I saw the knife, Instinct took over. I didn't think. I moved. I exploded from behind the couch and sprinted toward the stairs. Behind me, Mel screamed my name. The sound echoed through the basement. I could hear her rushing after me as fast as her aging body would allow. Adrenaline erased every trace of hesitation. I charged up the staircase 2 steps at a time. The old wood rattled beneath my feet. At the top, I burst onto the first floor and headed upstairs. Some people later asked why I didn't immediately run outside. The answer is simple. My backpack was upstairs. All my belongings were in that room. In those few frantic seconds, I wasn't thinking rationally. I just wanted my things. I sprinted down the hallway and into the bedroom. My backpack sat exactly where I'd left it. I grabbed it and turned around. Then I ran. Back down the hallway. Down the staircase. Every second felt critical. At any moment, I expected Mel to appear. When I reached the first floor again, I glanced toward the basement. She had already made it back to the top steps, still holding the knife, still coming. That image remains burned into my memory. I didn't wait. I bolted through the front door. Cold night air slammed into my face. The woods surrounding the property seemed darker than ever. I raced across the yard toward my car. My hands shook as I fumbled for the keys. Finally, I unlocked the door, climbed inside, and started the engine. For several seconds, I simply sat there trying to breathe. My chest hurt. My pulse felt uncontrollable. Then I looked back toward the house. Mel was standing in the open doorway, watching, completely still. The porch light illuminated her figure against the darkness behind her. She didn't wave. She didn't call out. She just stared. I threw the car into gear and drove. The huge property disappeared behind me. The woods vanished into the rearview mirror. Within 10 minutes, I was safely home. Fortunately, I had never given Mel any personal information. She didn't have my address. She didn't have my phone number. There was no way for her to contact me, and she never did. To this day, I still wonder about the 2 bodies in that basement. Mel had occasionally mentioned a husband during conversation.